The auction hall buzzed with noise, a cacophony of alien voices haggling over rare and exotic creatures. In the center, under harsh fluorescent lights, stood the latest lot. A dragon, though a pitiable shadow of what one might imagine. Its scales were dull and patchy, hanging loosely on its frail body. Wings that should have stretched wide in majestic arcs drooped like tattered sails. It let out a faint growl, more a whimper than a roar, earning laughter from the gathered bidders. Next up, boomed the auctioneer, his voice echoing through the metallic chamber. A prime specimen of the Zinnereth dragon species. He paused as chuckles rippled through the room. Or what's left of one, his attempt to sell the creature as anything other than a failure was transparent. No one was fooled. The bidders whispered amongst themselves, their disdain evident. Pathetic, can't even breathe fire, a waste of credits. For the dragon, this was nothing new. It had spent its life as an outcast among its kind, rejected for its weakness and inability to meet the fierce expectations of its lineage. Its eyes, though dim, held a flicker of something deeper, pride buried beneath layers of humiliation. Standing at the back of the crowd, unnoticed by the towering aliens around her, was a human girl. She was young, her stature almost childlike compared to the other bidders, but her gaze was steady. She studied the dragon with quiet intensity, her brow furrowing. She didn't see what the others saw: failure, weakness, waste. Instead, she saw something they couldn't: potential. The auctioneer's patience began to wane. Come on. Surely someone sees the value here? A dragon, no matter its state, is a rare prize. His tone betrayed desperation. When no bids came, he sighed, raising his hand to dismiss the creature. Wait, her voice cut through the murmurs, soft yet resolute. The crowd turned, surprised. A human? Bidding? She stepped forward, her boots clicking softly against the metallic floor. I'll take it, she said simply, holding up a modest sum. It wasn't much, but it was more than anyone else had been willing to offer. The auctioneer hesitated, his glowing eyes narrowing. You realize what you're buying, don't you? This isn't some majestic beast. It's a dragon, she interrupted, her tone firm. And it's mine. The room erupted into laughter. A human, wasting money on that? One bidder sneered. Hope you enjoy feeding it until it keels over. Ignoring the jeers, she approached the dragon. It flinched as she drew near, its instincts telling it to expect pain or mockery. Instead, she extended a hand, her palm open and non-threatening. I'm not like them, she whispered. You're coming with me now. The dragon hesitated, then let out a soft, trembling breath. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, someone had looked at it without judgment. As she led the creature away, the auctioneer shook his head. Humans, he muttered, always so sentimental. Behind her, the crowd's laughter faded, but she didn't care. They don't see it, she murmured to the dragon as they exited the hall. But I do. You're not weak. You're just waiting for your moment. The dragon hesitated at the threshold of the human's dwelling, its wary eyes scanning the unfamiliar environment. The place was humble, a far cry from the grand caverns its kind were said to inhabit. Yet it was warm, a stark contrast to the cold cages it had known. The girl moved with quiet purpose, setting down a bowl of water and arranging some food, a strange combination of fruits, grains, and protein strips. She gestured gently. It's for you. The dragon didn't move. Its body was tense, ready to flee if this turned out to be another cruel trick. The girl didn't force it, didn't rush. She simply stepped back and sat on the floor, giving the creature space. Hours passed in silence before hunger won out, and the dragon crept forward. It ate quickly, its movements jerky and defensive, as if expecting the food to be snatched away. Each day, the routine repeated. The girl would leave food and water, tending to her other tasks while the dragon observed her from a distance. It was always watching, its golden eyes following her every move. At night, she spoke to it in a soft, steady voice, telling stories of her homeworld, of her struggles, of why she had been at that auction in the first place. She wasn't rich, not by a long shot, but she had saved enough to make the trip, driven by a feeling she couldn't explain. "I've always been drawn to things others throw away," she admitted one evening. "Maybe because I know what it feels like to be underestimated." The dragon didn't respond, but it listened. There was a subtle shift in its posture, its body slightly less guarded. Trust, she realized, wouldn't come easily. It had been hurt too many times. One afternoon, while cleaning a corner of her home, she stumbled upon a piece of old tech, a hollow display device she had salvaged from a junkyard. Sparked an idea. She spent hours repairing it, finally coaxing it to life. The next day, she activated the display, projecting an image of a Zinnereth dragon in its prime. The dragon froze, its gaze locked on the hologram. The figure was everything it wasn't: powerful, radiant, commanding. Its wings spread wide, its scales shimmering like molten gold. The girl knelt beside the dragon, careful not to invade its space. "That's what they think you'll never be," she said softly. "But I think they're wrong." It didn't react immediately, but later that night, it approached her for the first time. She sat perfectly still as it lowered its head, allowing her to touch it. Her fingers brushed against its dull scales, and she felt a faint warmth beneath the surface. "You're not broken," she whispered. "You're just waiting to shine." From that moment, the dragon's behavior began to change. It followed her movements more closely, its steps more confident. It still flinched at sudden noises, but the fear was no longer all-consuming. A fragile bond was forming, one built not on dominance or control but on understanding. The girl kept her promise of patience. Each small step forward was celebrated, each setback met with quiet reassurance. For the first time, the dragon felt something it had almost forgotten: hope. The girl began her work with meticulous care, determined to help the dragon grow into the creature she knew it could be. She scoured every source she could find, piecing together scraps of knowledge about the Zinnereth dragons. The information was fragmented, some ancient alien texts, some human scientific studies, but it was enough to form a plan. She started small, testing the dragon's limits without pushing too hard. Its wings, still weak and tattered, couldn't support its weight for long. She fashioned makeshift obstacles, encouraging it to leap short distances before gliding down. At first, the attempts were clumsy, and the dragon often stumbled or fell. Each failure brought flashes of frustration in its eyes, but she was always there, offering calm reassurance. "You're getting better," she'd say, even if the progress was almost imperceptible. Strength was only part of the challenge. The dragon's fire, a defining trait of its species, was barely more than a sputtering spark. The girl experimented with different foods, mixing in minerals known to enhance combustion. She built a small forge outside her home, where the dragon could practice safely. At first, the flames barely singed the wood she placed before it. But as days turned into weeks, the sparks grew brighter, hotter. Each time the fire flared a little stronger, the dragon's confidence grew. Beyond the physical training, she focused on breaking through its fear. The dragon was still hesitant, its movements always shadowed by doubt. She understood this wasn't just about strength, it was about trust, both in her and in itself. To help, she introduced games that challenged its instincts. She tied a weighted ball to a rope and swung it in wide arcs, encouraging the dragon to dodge and strike with precision. The game seemed to awaken something buried deep, a primal joy in movement and play. Over time, the dragon's transformation became visible. Its scales, once dull and lifeless, began to regain their shine, catching the light in flickers of bronze and gold. Its wings grew stronger, able to hold it aloft for longer stretches. The fire it exhaled burned brighter, a molten orange streak that seared the air. Despite the progress, there were setbacks. Some days, the dragon refused to engage, retreating to a corner as if overwhelmed by the weight of its own expectations. The girl never forced it. Instead, she sat nearby, letting her quiet presence remind it that failure wasn't the end. "It's okay," she'd say softly. "We'll try again tomorrow." One evening, after months of steady work, the dragon faced a final test. She placed a heavy stone atop a tall pillar, a challenge that combined all it had learned: flight, precision, and strength. The dragon hesitated, the doubt flickering in its eyes, but she stood at the base, her gaze steady. "You can do this," she said. With a powerful leap, the dragon soared. Its wings beat the air in rhythmic strokes as it climbed higher, its silhouette cutting through the twilight. Reaching the pillar, it struck the stone with a burst of fire, sending it tumbling to the ground. The dragon let out a triumphant roar, the sound resonating deep and strong. The girl smiled, pride evident in her expression. "See? I told you. You're more than they ever imagined." News of a monstrous alien beast terrorizing nearby settlements reached the girl's small home. The creature, massive and destructive, had already overwhelmed the local defense forces, leaving behind devastation in its wake. Officials issued warnings, urging citizens to evacuate, but resources were stretched thin. Most believed it was only a matter of time before the settlements were abandoned entirely. The girl listened to the reports with a grim expression. She glanced at the dragon, now a far cry from the weak creature she had brought home months ago. Its wings were powerful, its scales gleamed like molten metal, and its fire burned with fierce intensity. Yet she knew the world still doubted it and her. When she volunteered to face the beast, the authorities dismissed her outright. "This isn't a game," one of them snapped. "We need real solutions, not reckless stunts." The dragon growled low, sensing the insult, but the girl placed a calming hand on its neck. She didn't argue. She didn't need their permission. At dawn, she and the dragon set out, heading toward the outskirts of the settlement where the beast had last been seen. The air grew heavy with tension as they approached the ravaged land. The creature came into view, a towering mass of muscle and claws, its eyes burning with primal rage. It let out a deafening roar, shaking the ground beneath them. The dragon's wings unfurled, casting a shadow over the ground as it prepared to face its opponent. The girl's voice was steady as she spoke. "You've trained for this. You're ready." The dragon's gaze met hers, and for a moment, the bond between them was unspoken but undeniable. The battle began with a clash of raw power. The beast charged, its massive frame tearing through the earth as it lunged. The dragon took to the air, its movements swift and precise, avoiding the beast's snapping jaws. Fire rained down from above, scorching the ground and forcing the creature to retreat. But the beast was relentless, its strength unmatched by anything the dragon had faced before. The girl watched carefully, analyzing the fight. She shouted commands, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Stay above it. Force it to overextend." The dragon responded instantly, its trust in her absolute. It circled high, baiting the beast into striking upward. When the creature lunged, the dragon twisted mid-air, delivering a burst of fire to its exposed flank. The beast roared in pain, its movements becoming more erratic. But it wasn't defeated yet. It lashed out, clipping the dragon's wing and sending it crashing to the ground. The girl's heart leapt into her throat, but she didn't falter. "Get up," she called. "You can do this." With a growl of determination, the dragon rose. Its scales glowed with an inner heat, its fire more intense than ever. The beast charged again, but this time the dragon met it head-on. With a powerful leap, it soared upward, evading the attack before diving down. Its claws raked across the beast's hide, and with one final earth-shaking roar, it unleashed a torrent of fire directly at its opponent. When the smoke cleared, the beast lay motionless, defeated. The dragon stood tall, its chest heaving, its victory undeniable. The girl approached, her expression one of quiet pride. She placed a hand on its side. "I knew you could do it." Word of their triumph spread quickly. The same officials who had dismissed them now stood in awe, their skepticism replaced by respect. The once rejected dragon was hailed as a hero, its strength and courage undeniable. And the girl, the human who had seen value where others saw none, became a symbol of hope and perseverance. As they prepared to leave, the girl glanced back at the cheering crowd, then forward to the open sky. "Ready for the next challenge?" she asked softly. The dragon let out a low, confident growl, its wings stretching wide as it took flight, carrying them both toward a horizon full of endless possibilities.